Currently being told about Palestine. Number 1. 40 babies were beheaded. This is completely false. No evidence has been provided for this. The claim comes from this journalist during a walk and talk. She makes the claim saying,
I see in the distance more bodies being covered. Babies. Their heads cut off.
Later in a tweet, however, she admits that she did not see bodies, but heard a soldier talking about it. Number 2. People were raped. Also false. There is no evidence of this whatsoever. Number 3. 250 people were killed at a concert. False. The only videos we have seen are people running away from the concert. There isn't a single video or photo suggesting that 250 people were killed at a concert or that a mass shooting took place. What we do have, however, are interviews of Israelis claiming that Palestinian resistance fighters were actually kind to them, merciful to them. So why are they lying? It's called atrocity propaganda. They lie about atrocities in order to incite emotions, hatred, and violence. Why? Because they are the ones planning to commit atrocities themselves. To do this, they need to convince you that Palestinians are barbaric animals that rape, torture, and behead babies. This is a war of information. Follow for more and help us fight.
An easy way to know if you are controlled. Is there somebody or something that you're not allowed to criticize?
That's right.
Simple as that. If you lived in Nazi Germany, you couldn't criticize the Nazi Party. If you lived in the Soviet Union, you couldn't criticize the Communist Party of Russia. If you live in China right now, you can't criticize the Chinese Communist Party. If you live in North Korea, you can't criticize Kim Jong-un. If you live in Cuba, you can't criticize the Cuban Communist Party. If you live in America, who can't you criticize?
Ooh.
Who can't you criticize in America?
The Jewish lobby.
Yes.
On both sides.
Right.
That's right. That tells you who controls the country. You're not. The fact that we're having this discussion and we're on the edge, all right? Everybody knows here, this is the edge.
Oh, yeah.
Why are we on the edge? Because we're touching the third rail. We're breaking the taboo. You're not allowed to discuss the power of the Israeli lobby in America. That's proof right there. They control America. That's who's controlling free speech in this country. That's who's eliminating the ability to criticize Planned Parenthood. Because who owns Planned Parenthood?
Sunt destul de aproape de noi în momentul ăsta și se pare că s-au oprit. Cu siguranță este și infanteria israeliană care interceptează toate aceste bombe. O să mai rămânem așa puțin pentru că niciodată nu știi exact când se opresc bombardamentele.
السلام عليكم. ايه ده المجتمع ده.
Did you know that Israel is paying influencers on social media $1,000 a video to put out reports about Hamas being evil and savage and beheading babies and doing all this shit and defending Israel's right to defend themselves in this genocide? $1,000 a video. They're paying influencers to promote their fucking genocide. First of all, shame on any of you fucking influencers who took the bait and the money and did this. Shame on you. You are complicit in the genocide of a people. Second of all, shame on fucking Israel. You know what? I would expect nothing less since you're just a vassal state of the United States who does the same fucking thing. It's always about controlling the narrative. And it's always about putting your propaganda out there to justify the horrific fucking things you do to other people in the world. Just like the fucking United States does. It's disgusting. And as a United States citizen, I'm going to continue to fight against my own country doing it, and I'm going to continue to fight against Israel doing it. This is horrific. It is time for anybody with a platform to come together and demand that the United States stops funding Israel. to the tune of $3.3 billion worth of bombs a year. The United States is enabling this and has been the entire time. It is time to end this. It is time for us as decent Americans to call not only our own country out for enabling this genocide, but call out Israel for performing this genocide.
If anyone is guilty for the bloodshed that's going on, it is the international community, particularly Britain. The international community has given the greenest of green lights to the Israeli army to do what it wants. And that means the freedom to commit war crimes. You'll see Western values as they actually operate, raining down bombs on completely innocent Gazan civilians. Whether they're supporters of Hamas, Fatah, whether they're civilians, they're going to die and are dying in their thousands. Where are Western values there? If there's blood on anyone's hands, it's on those who say
Israel has a right to defend itself.
Israel has the perfect right to defend itself.
Israel has a right to defend itself.
Israel must have that, does have that right to defend herself.
Israel has an absolute right to defend itself.
Israel has a right to self-defense.
This is not the whole story. It's not the defense of Israel. It is the expansion of Israel, and it is the creation of an apartheid regime even more severe than the one that happened in South Africa. Israel says it's fighting an existential war, and it has compared what Hamas did to a Holocaust. Half my family died in the Holocaust. There's no comparison. From a Palestinian perspective, you have to realize that Israel was the lords, the masters of the land. They controlled all your movements. They controlled how much you ate. They controlled who you married. It's the one that decides when to attack. This is a country used to total control over 1/2 of the population, and it lost that control. And it lost that control wildly. I'm appalled by some of the things that happened. The shock this has produced, the sudden loss of confidence in its star performer, which is its army and its intelligence services, cannot be underestimated. That shock has now turned to anger. That anger has now turned to an unholy desire to kill Gazans.
I think now is the time that we need to erase Gaza.
We gotta wipe them off the fucking map. I'm walking about every fucking flatland like a parking lot.
Kill Palestinians, all of them!
There's a kafar azar happening every night in Gaza. Women and children buried under rubble. There is absolutely apocalyptic scenes going on there. The Israeli Air Force deliberately targeting blocks, individual families, and wiping them out with precision weapons. And this is happening now to one family after another. I don't think Israel, and in particular the Israeli army, can give people lectures on brutality, particularly directed at children. It happens all the time. In the so-called stable peace, there were 34 children killed so far this year by soldiers in the West Bank. Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, the man who said that Palestinians are human animals, said Israeli forces will not be held accountable for anything they do. So all the past rules have been torn up, and Israel is going for the maximum number of Gazan casualties. And that's what the international community is allowing Israel to do. They have given Netanyahu the green light and an unlimited time to mount a ground invasion of Gaza. Hamas called its attack on southern Israel the Al-Aqsa flood for a reason. Al-Aqsa is being invaded and attacked all the time. Al-Aqsa isn't just their third holiest site for Islam. It's also a national symbol for Palestine. This sacred turf is actually being taken away piecemeal. And again, the West is letting them do this. This was the reason for Hamas saying enough is enough. But there were lots of other reasons as well. If you can imagine it, 16 years in an open-air prison with the electricity controlled or rationed, food rationed, 60% unemployment, settler attacks on Palestinian villages protected by the army, which Israelis themselves describe as pogroms, a total impossibility of a political solution or even a national unity government, and that suited Israel absolutely fine. And that is the situation that the Palestinians are facing. Now, what the Hamas attack has done is to say, I'm sorry, we're here. You cannot ignore us. And this is the fundamental problem of Israel thinking that it can wipe Gaza out. It can wipe Gaza out. It can kill 10,000 people, 20,000 people. It cannot kill the Palestinian cause. But what do you think is going to happen to the memory of all those dead in a new generation that will break out with even stronger force in 20 or 30 years' time? That's history. That's what's happened before. Resistance, armed resistance, has been crushed many times. It's been crushed regularly. And what has happened? Hamas is now much, much stronger than previous iterations of it. So there's always going to be, whoever you call them, a very strong element of Palestinians who say the only way of changing the situation is by armed resistance, until they are involved in proper negotiations and a peace deal and a calm and an exchange of prisoners. How do we stop the violence? We stop the violence by reversing course, by realizing that the Palestinians are people, that there's always going to be resistance, whether it's Hamas, whether it's anyone else, whatever they call themselves, they are not going to be chucked off their land There is not going to be another Nakba. They're going to stay there, whatever, and they're going to die on that land. The only way out of this incredible cul-de-sac that we've got ourselves into is to stop giving Israel the green light, is to enforce negotiations with a broadly representative Palestinian national unity government that allows Palestinians to elect their own leaders, that lifts the siege on Gaza and lifts the siege on all the other Palestinian enclaves in the West Bank, and that you start a process of sharing the land from the river to the sea between the two peoples. And this has got to be done with a realization in Israel that there is no end to this until they fundamentally reverse course.
You've been getting increasingly angry, I think it'd be fair to say, enormously frustrated by US and Israeli government's barbaric acts in Gaza. I will not be shy in sharing that opinion on Piers Morgan's show today. Why are you so frustrated?
Well, honestly, I didn't expect the framing that you put on this segment, and it's framing like that, that's disgusting. So I don't see what this has anything to do with anti-Semitism. I cry for those Israeli innocent civilians, but do I see you guys crying for Palestinians? Because what, Palestinian lives don't matter? I think the real bigotry here is saying that Palestinians, we can kill 3 times as many of them already, and this is the appetizer. Netanyahu and his barbaric government have not even started the entree of murder and death and mayhem they're about to do, and that's somehow okay, killing 3 times as many Palestinian civilians, let alone the occupation, which is bigotry by definition. We say that everyone in the world can defend themselves, can have their own state, can have sovereignty, except the Palestinians. And the reasoning behind that is the Palestinians are what? They're what? The idea is that they are savages and that Muslims are too violent and cannot control themselves, so they must be occupied for 56 brutal, disgusting years. So I've had enough of the bigotry against Muslims and Palestinians, and I need you to speak out against that instead of covering every outrageous, atrocious action of the right-wing government of Israel and going, oh, it's anti-Semitism. Whenever Israel is criticized, people go, oh, no, it's anti-Semitism. And instead of attacking that, all you guys ever do is hide behind the veil of anti-Semitism. Do you know why Palestinians might not like Israelis? Because they've been oppressed for 56 straight years. Imagine writing the name of your child on their legs so that you could find them in the rubble after Israel or any government drops a bomb on them. I need the West to understand something. Bombs kill people. And do you know how they kill people? They incinerate them alive, or their heads explode. But you have to be equally honest and equally outraged at the immorality of incinerating babies and grandmothers and aunts and uncles, which is what we're doing right now. America cannot keep sending aid for death and destruction. Enough of the occupation. End it today. End it today. It's monstrous.
It's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region.
They'll say this 5,000 times in my career. The Ironclad Committee of the United States has Israel based on our principles, our ideas, our values, the same values. I've often said, Mr. President, that if we're not in Israel, we'd have to them.
If you can go in, if they go in there and they end up defeating the Hamas military wing, understand that Hamas is an ideology. It's not just people. You're going to kill people, but because you've blown up the Palestinians, you've made the Hamas ideology immortal. It will never go away. There will always be a Hamas resistance. Israel doesn't understand that. They're going in there, but the price they're going to pay, they're going to lose thousands of soldiers dead. Thousands. They're also going to be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of hostages. That'll be on Israel. That'll be on Israel. And no matter what happens, Israel's going to come out of this entire tragic situation weaker than they entered it.
וכל זה הולך ליפול בקרוב מאוד, היום, מחר, על עזה. כל זה.
Finally, we have no real army anymore. The army is down to perhaps, 450,000. How much of that is ready to fight is open to debate. Much of it is sitting in Eastern Europe right now. We don't have the means to rapidly ship a large force of 80 to 100,000 troops on the ground into the region, which means that we're reliant on special forces and right now 2,000 Marines and perhaps 2,000 special forces and special operations forces. That's not going to make much of a dent. And as we've seen quite recently within the last 24 hours or so, some of our special ops forces and Israeli special ops forces went into Gaza to reconnoiter, to plan for where they might want to go to free hostages and make an impact. And they were shot to pieces and took heavy losses, as I understand it. I think that's where we're headed. And I don't see that as a win for Israel in any way, shape, or form. And I certainly think it's very dangerous for us.
يا أستاذنا، طيب هي يعني خلينا الله عرفوه بالعقل. طيب يا أخي كيف دخلت الأسلحة هاي لحماس؟ من وين دخلت؟ دخلت من البحر؟ لا، دخلت من مصر. يعني كيف دخلت من مصر؟ المسيرات كيف دخلت؟ ما في معزة بتدخل لقطاع غزة إلا مصر تعلم فيها. يعني هاي مسألة بس، لكن الناس للأسف ما بيفهموا. الناس بس شاطرين يسبوا ويشتموا وتشوف هذول الدباب الإلكتروني، لأنهم بدهم يحطموا معنويات مصر، بدهم يكرهوا العرب بأي دور لمصر يتعلق بالقضايا القومية الأساسية. مصر الآن تستعيد دورها، مصر الآن يعني تعود إلى ماضيها، خلص انكشفت اللعبة. والقرار لاحظ حتى الآن مصر لا تقوم بأي دور وساطة.